podcast. The Heidelcast.
It's a Heidelminicast. And now, Scott Clark.
So, what about Richard Sibbes, and what about the English Reformed generally?
If the Heidelcast helps you, won't you help us keep it going? Please make the coffer clink by clicking on the PayPal link or by sending a check to Heidelberg Reformation Association, 1637 East Valley Parkway, number 391, Escondido, California, 92027.
You got some letters.
Anonymous texts in to ask about Richard Sibbes. Says, love the cast. I assume that's the Heidelcast. 5 stars all the way. Want to know about Richard Sibbes. Is his doctrine sound? Well, thanks for listening, Anonymous. And that's a great question. The communion and fellowship of man with God was first founded on a covenant of works made with Adam in paradise. If he did obey and did not eat of the forbidden fruit, he should have life both for himself and his posterity. The which covenant, because God would not have forgotten, he afterward renewed in the delivery of the 10 Commandments, requiring from man obedience to them in his own person, exactly at all times, perpetually, promising life on the obedience and threatening death and cursing if he continued not in everything the law required to do. But this fellowship being places in man's own freedom, and having so weak a foundation, he lost both himself and it, so that now, by the first covenant of works, Adam and all his posterity are under a curse. For we cannot fulfill the law that requireth personal obedience, perfect obedience, and exact obedience. He that continueth not in all is cursed. Galatians 3:10. The law then findeth us dead and killeth us. It findeth us dead before, and not only leaves us dead still, but makes us more dead. Those are the words of Richard Sibbes, who lived from 1577 to 1635, and that's from the Works of Richard Sibbes, volume 6, and page 3. Many English and Dutch-speaking Christians have a particular affection for and connection to that varied and complex movement known as Puritanism, which I usually describe as English Reformed theology. The term Puritan is complicated. It was a pejorative. It was an epithet that was used of the English Reformed, and then they sort of embraced it ironically and sort of redefined it. It really meant you guys are, like the Donatists and the Cathars or the Albigensians. Those are patristic and medieval heretics. And it wasn't true. They were just Reformed folks. And unfortunately, one of the downsides of them embracing, ironically, that adjective Puritan is that people have come to think of them as a sort of unique, special, separate, distinct group. Special in a way that is, not true of the rest of Reformed theology, and that just isn't the case. They thought of themselves as just the English branch or the English-speaking branch of the Reformed Church, and the folks in the Netherlands and in France and Germany, everywhere else there were Reformed people in the 16th and 17th centuries did not think of them as being unique or distinct. That's why I don't like to use the word Puritan, because it sort of reinforces that kind of myth about the English Reformed. But at any rate, one of the English Reformed theologians to whom my friend Paul Schaefer introduced me was Richard Sibbes. And one of his nicknames was the Sweet Dropper, because his preaching was so laden with the gospel. And that's why it was sweet. There were drops of sweetness coming from his lips. The Banner of Truth has a number of good, short biographies of the English Reformed. And about Sibbes, they write that he was born at Tostock, Suffolk, in 1577, went to school in Bury St. Edmunds. His father, quoting here, a good, sound-hearted Christian, close quote, at first intended that Richard should follow his own trade as a wheelwright. as a fellow would make wheels for carts and other things, I suppose. But the boy's, quoting again, strong inclination to his books and well profiting therein led to his going up to St. John's College, Cambridge in 1595. He was converted around 1602, 1603 through the powerful ministry of Paul Bain, who was the successor of William Perkins in the pulpit of Great St. Andrew's Church. After earning his Bachelor of Divinity in 1610, it took a long time, it was a very difficult degree to earn in those days, is roughly the equivalent of today's Master of Divinity, roughly. He was appointed lecturer at Holy Trinity Church, Cambridge. Later, through the influence of his friends, he was chosen to be the preacher at Gray's Inn, London, and he remained there until 1626. In that year, he returned to Cambridge as master of St. Catherine's Hall, and then later returned to Holy Trinity, this time as its vicar. He was granted a doctorate in divinity, D.D., if you see that. That's what that stands for, in 1627, and was thereafter frequently referred to as the Heavenly Dr. Sibbes. He continued to exercise his ministry at Gray's Inn, London, and Holy Trinity, Cambridge, until his death on 6 July, 1535, at the age of 58. Like Perkins, Sibbes was a conforming minister in the Church of England. So he's an Anglican minister, and rather than withdrawing from the established church, like William Ames, he remained in the established church, but taught the same Reformed theology, piety, and practice that we see reflected in the Westminster Standards. Because of where he ministered, and to whom, Sibbes had considerable influence. His ministry was known to be gracious, and that's why people used the adjective sweet and heavenly to describe his ministry. His works are a reminder that Reformed theology can be graciously and warmly taught. His published works are available through the Banner, and they've also been recently reprinted by Reformation Heritage Books. These are 7 volumes. And recently there was published, not too long ago, a volume by David B. McKinnon, Refreshment for the Soul, a year of daily readings from the Heavenly Dr. Richard Sibbes. One more quotation, and then I'll give you a few more things you can read about Sibbes if you're interested. This is from Works, Volume 1, page 231, quoting here, "Objection, but I have often relapsed and fallen into the same sin again and again. Answer, if Christ will have us pardon our brother 77 times, can we think that he will press us more than he will be ready to do himself?" And he gives you a sense of how Perkins went at things. As I say, the 7 volumes recently reprinted by Reformation Heritage Books. They're $144 in hard copy, and I checked the Banner too. I think they have the complete works. I recommend Paul Schaeffer's The Spiritual Brotherhood, Cambridge Puritans and the Nature of Christian Piety. It's now an e-book, and you can find it in hard copy, I think, used. That's Paul is a fellow, as I say, who introduced me to Sibbes. And I also recommend very much Mark Dever's book, Richard Sibbes, Puritanism and Calvinism in Late Elizabethan and Early Stuart England. This is another hard-to-find work. You can get it through the library if you can't find it used anywhere. When I'm looking for these sorts of things, sometimes I go to Amazon, and certainly check there. I go to ABE Books. It's the American Book Exchange, ABE Books. They've sort of consolidated all the other used book search engines, ABE Books. And otherwise, if you can't find it there, you can get it through interlibrary loan. So the title is, again, Richard Sibbes, Puritanism and Calvinism in Late Elizabethan and Early Stuart England. Just go to any library, call your local public library and say, hey, I need to do an interlibrary loan. What do I do? And they will be delighted, I'm sure, because nobody in the public library, probably people rarely ask for interlibrary loan. And then they can get it for you from a library. They can loan it to you. So it's, as I say, hard to find book, but worth the effort. It's a very readable and outstanding study in English Reformed theology. And I think maybe it was the final nail in the coffin of the Calvin versus the Calvinists approach to understanding the history of Reformed theology. So, Richard Sibbes, strongly recommended by the Heidelcast.
Thanks for listening. Tune in tomorrow for more from the Heidelcast, brought to you by HeidelbergReformationAssociation.org. Don't forget, when the coin in the coffer clinks, the cost of bandwidth shrinks. Copyright Heidelberg Reformation Association. All rights reserved. This is a Heidelmedia production.
The best podcast, the Heidelcast.